on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society.
No, Disney. Well, there you all are. Thank you for coming in and wanting to be with us here on our Six Screen Sunday program. And what a program it is. The program is entitled Jehovah's Witnesses Share Their Watchtower Story. And we're so glad that we have people coming in and wanting to share their story. Today, we are looking for someone that might want to do that. We had some people scheduled, but sometimes they just can't make it. So if there's anyone listening in, and I'll put a number up on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have a story to tell about your trek in the Watchtower, by all means, call us and let us know that you'd like to tell your story. Boy, I wish it could all be up here in New England. It is absolutely breathtaking. I've been living here. I'm 76 years old. I've been living in New England a good part of my life, most of my life. But I have to tell you, I have never seen such a beautiful foliage season. I don't know if it's because of the warm and then the cold, the warm and the cold. I don't know, but the leaves, it looks like the trees are on fire. It looks unbelievable. But I wish you were here with me, and I'm glad that you're at least here and listening in. We appreciate that. So let's see if we got Anmarie with us. Hello, Anmarie.
Hello, my brother. Happy Six Screen Sunday. I don't know about you, but every time I realize it's Six Screen Saturday or Six Screen Sunday, I remember again how incredibly blessed we all are to be in freedom, to be awake, and to be able to speak freely and think freely. So happy Six Screen Sunday, my brother.
Well, same to you, Anmarie. And, I have to really say that it's really, I know I talk about on Saturday night. I'm really feeling good, Anmarie, about what we see going on in the Watchtower. We know there are so many people that do not believe it anymore. They are shaking themselves loose. And as you hear me say about our convention that's coming up in 2025, you're going to be here. And I've got people writing me. I just sent off 7 tickets while I'm doing the program. People are writing me. They want to come to the convention. Now, that really is showing me that there's so many people that are leaving the Watchtower right now. Never in their history has there been this many people leaving, and so many people in there that don't even believe it anymore. So this is really satisfying. It's very encouraging to see this, to see that a lot of our brothers and sisters that we knew no longer want to be in there. Like we have left, they are leaving. And Anmarie, you're making a difference. People listen to your program. You've been getting a lot of people listening into your Tentacles program on Saturday night. Did a great job last night. A lot of people listen in. You're getting more and more people that are beginning to see that your program can really help them work through the struggles they're having in the organization. Last night, you did great with that program you had concerning some of the stories and some of the people calling in and giving their stories. It was amazing, Anmarie.
Well, I want to thank you, my brother, because, I needed to call you to ask you if it was all right with you to possibly make a short series if it came to that, because I came up with over 20 stories of my own. And I thought if one person can come up with that many stories, there has to be so many stories, my brother. And I'm very grateful to you for providing the platform by which so many that were never really able to freely speak about their experiences in the Watchtower could come on your platform and just let it out, tell it. We need to be able to tell our story. Thank you so much, my brother.
Well, thank you, Anmarie. Now, what I'm going to do, if you're listening on YouTube and Facebook, right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the telephone number. So if you'd like to come on and share your story, Anmarie had so many people last night sharing this story. Now, if you'd like to come on today and let us know what it was like when you were in the Watchtower, was it a good experience? Was it a horrible experience? Are you happy now that you're out? Well, go ahead and let us know that. So you can take a look right on YouTube and on Facebook. You can see the telephone number to call in. So go ahead and do that. Anne-Marie, I'll tell you what. I had a woman write me yesterday, and she was interviewed on the Cedars program, his YouTube channel, and she has quite the story to tell as well. I don't think she's listening in here today, but I just sent her some tickets off to the convention. She actually is going to be giving a talk. Her story is really that good that we're going to give her a talk, a speaking position there at the convention. But she hasn't been out for a long time either. And this is what we're seeing. A lot of the people, like myself, for example, I was out in 2005, and you've been out for a good 20 years plus. And even Constance last night with Dick and Constance's program. Constance been out for 40 years, but she's still touched by the tentacles of the Watchtower. But we have so many new ones that are getting out. Isn't it something, Anmarie?
Oh, it really is. And like you've said so many times, you're doing the happy dance. I'm doing the happy dance. My husband's doing the happy dance, and he was never even in that organization. It's just this smell of freedom. And I remember when I first met you and started listening to the 6 Screens about 12 years ago, I think it is. I remember asking you, I have a feeling that there's going to be an exodus, like slowly, like a trickle, but then a whole bunch of people are going to be coming out of the Watchtower. And I asked you if you had that same feeling, and you said you did. And everything that you said that you saw happening, and it's all been coming true. All of the things that Johnny the Bethelite said, it all happened way before it ever happened when he first said it. This is going to happen. They're working on this. They're planning that. It all came true, just like everything you said. And I know a lot of people said you were daydreaming, you were sensationalizing, you were, exaggerating. And you know what? I know you never did. Never, never. You always told the truth.
Well, what it was, Anne-Marie, with Johnny the Bethelite in particular, see, what we did when we first started years ago, exposing the Watchtower, the only people that were really out there with us was Randy Waters, Bill Bowen, Barbara Anderson. There was just a handful of people doing this. So when I started putting information up that Johnny the Bethelite was sharing, people weren't used to such, horrible stories they were hearing from a Bethelite. They wouldn't believe he was one. Now today, there's a lot of Bethelites that are speaking up. But it's a shame that Johnny got a bad rap. He really, really did, because he was willing to be one of the first. He took a lot of risk doing it. And everyone, he's not for real. And, they would ask him questions trying to trap him. And I remember one night this man came on, and he was trying to trap Johnny the Bethelite, showing that Rick is just using Johnny to sensationalize and get people to his website. And I remember the man was really drilling and interrogating Johnny the Bethelite. And the man said, "Now, Johnny, I want to put you to the test." He says, "If you walk out there at 25 Columbia Heights," that's where the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses was at the time, in Brooklyn, New York. He says, "So if you walk out onto 25 Columbia Heights and you walk 1,000 feet down the road, and then you don't take the first street, but you take the second street, what's the name of that street?" I mean, that is, if someone said that to me, and I've been living here now for 10 years at this address, and they said that to me, I wouldn't be able to name the street either. So he's using this as at least his own way of thinking that Johnny's not real because he didn't know the street. That's the type of stuff, Anne-Marie, that we were getting on this program. Isn't that something?
It really is. And I'm so grateful. I don't have the best memory, but when I do remember something, I remember it pretty much perfectly. And I do remember being on the show when he first called in. It was very late at night. It was probably about 1 or 2 in the morning your time, because I remember it was about 10:30, 11. No, I think later, my time, Pacific time. And we were just talking, And all of a sudden, this hesitant male voice comes on, and you said, "Does somebody want to speak up?" And he said, "Yeah." And you said, "Who's this?" And he hesitated, and he said, "You can just call me Johnny the Bethelite." And you kind of laughed. And he said, "I'm calling from," you said, "Where are you calling from?" And he said, "I'm calling from Bethel." But he was like really quiet, and he seemed so hesitant and scared. And you kind of chuckled like, "Yeah, right." But you didn't say that. And so you asked him, "What's going on? What's on your mind?" And he said, "I don't know how long I can talk." And you asked where he was in Bethel, and he said he was in the closet. And you kind of chuckled again, like, "Yeah, right." Because we get some people that call in and just try to pull your leg. But you were very kind, but slowly but surely the story came out that he had woken up. He worked in the IT department. He was one of those that was supposed to monitor XJW sites, people's Facebook accounts, and so on. He was very adept at computer research and, very technically knowledgeable. And he had discovered so many horrible things. And there were a few of his coworkers that were kind of working with him. And they all, of course, had to play the game to look like good, faithful Watchtowerites, obedient, humble, and the whole schmeal. And, he was saying what was going on, just little here, little there. And he would only call in intermittently when he had the chance. He used to hang out at that coffee shop that you and Dick tried to find him after he disappeared. And it's like every little thing that he said at the time wasn't happening in the Watchtower. Like he said, what they were going to do with the Watchtower, cut them down, make fewer. They were going to have not secret, but public and non-public publications. And he talked about the cards. He talked about so many things. I'm sure you have a better memory about that. But all of the things that he said was going to happen, a lot of people said he was making it up. And you started to kind of believe him. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on, but I remember so well, and I miss him so much.
Well, we do. Boy, I'll tell you, it would be wonderful if he was still here with us. But I'll tell you, he just to highlight some of the things he talked about that came to fruition. He talked about, he mentioned a project that the Watchtower called the Manhattan Project. Now, we know that was also a World War II project about a certain position that the U.S. military was taking with a ship. But Johnny said that the Watchtower is naming this project the Manhattan Project. I said, "Well, Johnny, what is it?" He says, they're picking elite Jehovah's Witnesses in Manhattan, New York, downtown New York. And he says they're picking elite witnesses to be involved in this street work with carts. He says they wheel carts around with literature, and they're going to try to connect with people on the sidewalk and the surrounding area. So we never heard that before. Now we said that's what they're calling it. Now this was a year in advance before the real cart work. They tried it. They do like little trials to see if it's going to work. And so it was like a year before this even happened. And sure enough, the cart work today is totally recognized worldwide with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Johnny also talked about a new Bible that was in print. And this is a good part of a year he talked about it before it even came out. It was the Silver Sword, as we learned. That was the new edition of the New World Translation. And Johnny talked about that well in advance. So he did have, if he wasn't a Bethelite, where was he getting this information? Now, some would say, well, Rick, he was getting it from a friend that evidently is there. I don't see that. And then the other thing people did not know about Johnny the Bethelite, and I'll share it now because, I believe he's not even with us anymore, to be honest with everybody listening in. But Johnny the Bethelite would call at least once or twice a week, late at night. I'm talking about 2 or 3 in the morning, and wake me up many nights, but I kept the phone on for him because he said that was the only time he could really talk without being caught by some, snitch at Watchtower. So he would come on and talk to my wife, Susan, and I. He'd give us all this information about his family, his mother, his father. Someone going to do that? I mean, if this was a hoaxer, this just couldn't have happened. And, we totally believed everything he had to say. And at the end of it all, there was a pretty lousy ending. He loved working in the high tech department, and he was working in Brooklyn, New York. That's where the world headquarters was. Now they were moving. They were in the process of moving upstate to Warwick, New York. So Johnny one night told me that they wanted him in Warwick to hook up some transmitters for high-speed internet because they were having trouble getting connections up there because it's pretty much in the country. So Johnny had to go up there and he couldn't stand it. So he was up there for a good part of a month, and he wrote me some of the last conversations I had with Johnny. He wrote me and said, Rick, he says, can you help me and 4 of my buddies? He says, we've got to get out of here. And I got a brother I know that will give us a pass. We got to get out. We're going crazy. We can't stand it here. Could you help us out a little bit? Could you get some bus tickets for us back to New York City? I said, Johnny, you've helped me so much. I'll be glad to do that for you. So I got him the bus tickets for him and his buddies. They came back to New York. And that Saturday night that he came back, he came in and talked on the 6 screens. He says, Rick, I have to tell you what's going on up there. There's so much. He says there's a porn ring, a kiddie porn ring with the governing body members. I believe he said governing body officials, high officials of the Watchtower. And he said, this is going on. And all of a sudden, the world is catching up. They're finding out about this. And then that was the last call we ever had. Never heard from Johnny again, Anmarie.
Yeah, I remember that show well. He called in, and whenever he called in, a lot of times it was unexpected because, like you said, he could only call in when he could. But the last call that he made on the 6 screens was January 19th, 2019. And if anybody wants to look on the archives, either on Rick Farron SoundCloud or on the 6 screens of the Watchtower, just look for that date, January 19th, 2019. And you named his show, what was it, Jehovah's Underground?
Jehovah's Underground, yeah, Jehovah's Underground, yep.
And he said he seemed very, very upset. And anybody who doubted him, it's kind of stupid to me because you could hear the weariness in his voice, the sadness of having to deal with just how sick he discovered that this organization that he thought was God's organization really was. And he said that they had discovered, he and his friends, on the dark web, not just on the web, but on the deep, dark web, that the higher-ups of the Watchtower were involved with this horrible site, not just kiddie porn, but child sex trafficking. And it was really, really bad. And a lot of people were like, what? And it was awful. And I remember that you had said that, he had called and asked you for help to get him and his friends out of Warwick because he felt so trapped. And then you got a call from him. He seemed so happy that he had made it out of he had made it out of Warwick and made it back to Brooklyn. And he just seemed so relieved. And then all of a sudden, nothing. And I remember he used to call you and Susan all the time. He even told me personally when I was talking to him that he loved you and Susan so much because he considered you his safe place, you and Susan as his spiritual parents. And I remember you would buy him burner phones and, helping him all you could to feel safe. And when he got back to Brooklyn and sounded so happy, and then all of a sudden, nothing, that's not Johnny. Johnny would have made sure there was a way that you would know he was safe. He would find a way to contact you. And I just had a horrible, horrible feeling that they knew who he was. He had said before a few times, I think they're on to me. He was afraid. He was scared. But when he got back to Brooklyn, he seemed like, wow, I'm safe. And then all of a sudden he's gone. So I feel like what happened is they let him go, but that they had him set up because they had safe houses. They still had places in Brooklyn that Watchtower still owned. They owned some brownstones and other places. And I'm sure he probably went to one of them. And I'm just afraid that they tricked him. They trapped him, got him in a car, and God knows what they did to him because he would not have just disappeared. And I think you waited about a year, and then you and Dick drove to Brooklyn looking for him. You found the coffee shop where he used to hang out late at night, and you talked to one of the workers there who knew who Johnny was. Yeah, he used to come in here and there. He used to sit in this little booth in the corner just by himself. Remember that, my brother?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, even when Dick and I went down to Brooklyn, and, I really was hoping to find him somewhere, someplace. I don't know if he was suffering psychologically. He had a lot of pressure on him. His brother was actually in a mental psych ward in a New York hospital. That was putting pressure on Johnny as well. And, because he knew darn well, Anmarie, it's one thing. If you're disfellowshipped as a rank and file Jehovah's Witness, that's one thing. But now you have to up the ante a little bit. If you go up, if you're disfellowshipped as an elder, it gets even worse. But imagine if you're disfellowshipped at Bethel, the disgrace that comes upon you, your family back home, we get that just being normal rank and file, but a disfellowship Bethelite, it's torture at its highest order. You will just feel like nothing. You will feel so low. So he mentioned that to me, and that's why he had to be so careful. And I was thinking maybe he kind of had like a breakdown near the end. So Dick and I went down there and see if we could find him. And we went right to the world headquarters. Of course, at the time, they sold it out. But Johnny said he was still left behind and taking care of some of the properties. So we were looking at around the area. Watchtower owned a lot of property. They call them brownstones. They're very expensive buildings in Brooklyn. I'm talking right now, they're probably well over like $2 million and up. And so they kept that property when they moved. And of course, they're trying to even sell it off as we speak. So Dick and I spent a half a day looking around the brownstone, talking to people. And then I remembered he said he went to a coffee shop. He said he used to do the broadcast from a coffee shop. He didn't want to do it at Bethel in fear of getting caught. But we found the coffee shop. I described who he was. And the girl was a nice Mexican woman. And I said, does Johnny, we call him Johnny, but is there a man that comes here? He's Johnny was 6'4", blonde guy, light-haired fella. And he said, oh, no, he comes here every Saturday. All the time he comes here. So, so we couldn't find him, but it's very disappointing. But she did say, no, he shows up. He buys coffee there all the time. I figured if she said Saturday night or not, but she said he shows up all the time. Isn't that something, Anmarie?
That is something. And, I don't hear anybody else say it, but I do say it because I feel it in my heart that I believe that he was killed. And I do believe that. And I'm not trying to be sensationalizing or anything, but this Watchtower organization is so steeped in evil. I believe that there is no boundary that they won't cross if it suits their agenda, and they know how to do things and get away with it. They are so good at fooling people and doing the evil that they do while projecting this, oh, we're such good people. We represent the only true God. And it's not just this that makes me think that Watchtower had him killed. I believe this because over the years, I had heard other people mention that they knew of people who had, quote unquote, disappeared because they were speaking out and they were going to expose certain things. And then all of a sudden they disappeared. We had one caller that would only call in here and there. And she was a sweetheart lady, but she sounded kind of scared when she would talk about this line of, talk, that she knew of certain people that had been killed, and they literally knew where the bodies were buried. And it's like nobody can find out, and you can't tell anybody because you'll disappear too. And people don't just literally disappear. If you have a breakdown or if this or if that, I don't care, even if Johnny did have a breakdown. Let's just say he did. Well, you'd find him somewhere. There would be something we found this body of a blah, blah, blah. Can you identify him or whatever? He's gone. It has been 5 years, almost 6. No word. No. That man, I believe in my gut. They killed him.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and I'm glad you say it. I'll kind of say it too, but I'm going to get a lot of rhetoric from it. But I'm going to tell you quite frankly, what else could have happened? I mean, unless he went totally insane because of all of this, which I don't think happened. He wasn't some nutty guy. He seemed like a straightforward man. But what is of consequence here? And you brought it up, and there has been so many situations at Watchtower that have suggested people have disappeared. Now, I can't tell anyone listening to this program today whether Watchtower would kill people because they were interfering too much in their business practices. But I know the mafia does similar things. I'm not trying to disrespect the mafia here either, but I know the Watchtower is even worse than them. But it's just recently we found out, and we talked about it on JW World News on Saturday night. We found out about an investment firm that the Watchtower just set up in Ireland, the country of Ireland. And that firm is made up of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're experts in real estate and experts in being able to invest people's money to make more money. Now, why would the Watchtower be involved in something like this, we ask? But anyways, I was reading in an Irish newspaper all about this, and it's like the Wall Street Journal here in America. It's a business publication. In this Irish business publication newspaper I was reading, it estimated the Jehovah's Witness organization is worth $14 billion. Yes, 14 billion with a B. I mentioned it last night too. But when you have an organization, Anmarie, $1 billion is a lot of money. Just to put it in perspective, $1 billion is 1,000 million. I mean, if we all had $1 million, wow, you'd feel like you were on top of the world. But the Watchtower, they're worth 14 billion. And I'm thinking, if there's going to be anybody that's going to jeopardize that amount of money and expose them for who they are, and even talk about kiddie porn and perversion of sex perversion at the top levels of the Watchtower, that could be a millstone around your neck and thrown into the Hudson River. Yeah, just my thoughts. Yeah, what do you think?
No, really, absolutely. Because you really think it would be that hard to cover it up? No way. They're too. And that's what makes me feel that that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Why would they? He had a feeling. He was pretty sure they knew who they were, but he said he was too valuable. But for him to be kind of like, I got to get out of here, Rick, can you help me? There's a few of us, we need to get out of here. I wonder what happened to those 4 guys that came with him. But he was so relieved when he got to Brooklyn, and then that's it, nothing. And I have to remember as well, that while he was still at Brooklyn Bethel, he and some of his friends that, were in on it too, realized, how bad the Watchtower was, and they were trying to accumulate hard copy evidence. And he and a few of the guys, and there was a girl too at Bethel, they were all Bethelites, had knowledge of a secret room, a storage room where they had these files that they don't want anybody to see. And they had planned one night to break in and just steal whatever they could and get out of there. But when they got there, it seemed that somebody had found out and snitched on them, and there were Watchtower operatives hiding in this warehouse storage room. And when they were totally in there, these people that were there to catch them let them get the files, and then they said, "Stop where you are," whatever. And Johnny said we all started running, but he said the girl who had a handful of files was so scared she tripped and fell, and she was trying to grab up the files, but these guys that were there waiting for them grabbed her and they drug her off to some place and interrogated her. She was never allowed to talk to anybody or to get away. And then they locked her in a room at Bethel. And Johnny was saying they tried everything they could think of to get contact with her, but the door was locked. They had a guard at her door. And he said they even tried to go above her ceiling through a crawl space to try to maybe get a phone down to her, because they cut off all communication, and they were never again allowed to ever see her or talk to her again. And then she just disappeared. They found out later they had sent her home to her parents, and then they last heard from her. She basically said that her father had said to her, "It would have been better if you had never been born." So she went and bought a bunch of sleeping pills off the counter, probably diphenhydramine, and she took them and got into the bathtub and slit her wrists, and she died. And this is what Johnny told us. And if people knew half, even less than half of what we know about this horrible organization, people need to read 2 Corinthians. I don't know where it is, in chapter somewhere, about how these people that portray themselves as so good and so spiritual and so holy and so whatever. It says, no wonder. Doesn't Satan himself keep turning himself into an angel of light? Is it any wonder that his ministers, those who serve him, are able to do the same thing? Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'm just wondering here, Rick, if the Watchtower's in the business of whacking their enemies, are you concerned? I mean, why haven't they whacked you yet?
Well, no, let's just, I'm glad you brought that up, because we have a man named,
Sorry,
no, okay, no,
it's kinda hard not to laugh.
there's a man, Maverick, he's writing in on YouTube. Maverick, we're allegedly saying that he could have been bumped off. You know, we don't know, but we know the Watchtower organization is an evil organization. Yes, Mike.
I understand that, but don't you think you're going a little over the top making allegations like that when you have absolutely no idea that this actually happened?
Let me ask you a question.
I'm making allegations. Rick never said it. I say it. And you want to yell at me and make fun of me, you go right ahead.
It didn't happen. It's a lie.
Yeah, you don't know it didn't happen. You have no.
You don't know that it did happen.
Well,
You don't know.
Mike, let me ask you a question. Do you believe there's a mafia, a criminal syndicate? No, answer me yes or no.
Rick,
Listen. Well, you sound.
If you thought it was true, you wouldn't be saying it. You're just lying. You're making shit up. You're a liar.
Normally I would cut him off, but he's drinking again, Anmarie. See, that's what happened. No. Sometimes he comes on and, he's nice and calm. I asked him a direct question. I asked him if he believes there's a mafia. He said there is. Now, do you believe the mafia, Mike, does things that are a little unethical, illegal?
Rick, we're not talking about the mafia. We're talking about the Watchtower. They don't have anything. I don't understand what your point. You're making allegations that or at least Anmarie, some girl died. You don't know the person's name. Some guy that calls in with a fake name gave some bullshit story, and you're
my guy. I don't know why I don't know why. I don't get it. You're so smart sometimes, but other times you act like a raving maniac. I don't really get. Yeah, I mean,
you're making up stories that aren't true, and I'm not a maniac. I'm just calling out your
but I wish you could do it in a civil manner, a nice, gentle way. If you could come on and say, Rick,
what you're saying is utterly ridiculous, Rick. It's not even worth talking. I mean, it's silly. But what I'm going to say is, if you actually believe that they're this evil, and they'll kill people. I don't believe you have enough courage to get on here and talk about it. If this is all true, they might come and whack you. You obviously get a
well. Don't think I don't think about that, Mike. When I
they're not going to kill you. Oh my God. I shouldn't have said anything. When I just hear that, it just a few of these people.
Well, I wish you had an open mind. Your mind is so.
No. When you accuse somebody of murder with no evidence,
nobody accused anybody of murder, Mike. No, come on. Go back and listen to it. We talk about. Do you ever talk about things with your dad? I know you don't have a girlfriend. You can't talk to her about it. But have you ever?
No, I don't. You sit there. You like to sit there and make fun of me and call me a drunk and all this bullshit. I'm sick and tired of that. That's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
You don't know a damn thing about.
Well, don't call and be so irate next time. I mean, you're really willing to throw. You really.
You don't have a. You don't know me, Rick. You've never met me in your life. You don't know nothing about me.
I know enough. I know enough about you that you're a racist. I know enough about you that you are opinionated. I know enough about you that you don't know how to talk to people in a civil way. I know a lot about you that you don't have a.
We're on a stupid teleconference. I wouldn't talk to somebody like this in real life. Get real. I'm not stupid, okay?
Well, yeah, certainly acting that way, Mike. I know you're not. I know you're not, but you act that way at times. Jeez.
Okay.
All right. Good. Okay. Well, thanks for calling in. Anyway, but call in next time in a more gentle way. It would be nice. Thank you. All right, that's Mike. You know what he does? He causes a lot of issues here. He gets people all upset. He really does. That's what he does. That's his game plan. He finds joy in doing that. And there's a lot of people like him that somehow they got displaced, and they try to find somewhere where they can raise the roof on something. But he does it. But we like him. So Anmarie, it's it really drives me nuts that we can't give our opinion at times without being challenged, right?
Well, it's okay to be challenged, and I can understand if Mike thinks it's all crazy, but when he states things as fact, it's not true. He doesn't have any fact to back it up. He says you're a liar. He doesn't have one fact to back it up. He says you were accusing Watchtower of whacking off Johnny. You never said that. I said it because I look at the facts. I'm a nuts and bolts person. I look at the facts that we know. And we listened to Johnny for quite a few years, and you could hear the sorrow, the fear, the weariness in his voice, the depression. And, when he just was so happy to get back to Brooklyn, and then he disappeared, it already said he was pretty sure they knew who he was. He knew it was only a matter of time. And this is not the first time that I've heard of people just disappearing who were a threat to the Watchtower. And I do believe that there is no line that they will not cross if it suits their agenda. We're surmising here. We don't know for a fact, but the facts that we do know do lead to this logical conclusion, the most logical conclusion in my mind. And again, if anybody ever accuses you again of saying that Watchtower killed Johnny, I said it, and I'll say it again because that's what I feel in my gut. That's what the facts show me. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, well, you can say that. I mean, here's the whole thing, Anmarie. You know what really is amazing to me is people might have heard maybe one or two shows of Johnny the Bethelite, and he was on for 6 years doing programs. He's had over 100 programs that he did, but yet people will extract something he said in one of his programs and hold him hostage by listening to little tidbits. And it's really, I'm glad we brought this subject up today because I don't think I'm ever going to put it to rest. I totally believe that Johnny the Bethelite was a real Bethelite. And it really ticks me off today because all of the Bethelites now, they speak up, they get recognition. Some of them have, really strong acquaintances on the outside and sharing everything. And Johnny was a pioneer. But you know what happens to pioneers? They get arrows in the back. In fact, I do believe did someone want to speak up and talk about that? Is anyone on the program today that wants to speak up and give their opinion? Mike gives his.
Oh, yeah. Hello, Mr. Farron.
Yes, that's Ken. Go ahead. What do you think, Ken?
Well, I've been following the statements of Johnny the Bethelite all this time here. I myself have never heard anybody make outright accusations that, oh, yeah, they did something to him. We suspect that could have happened. Of course, you and I did not see anything. We don't have any evidence, but it is suspicious. He come on one day, and pretty soon he's not on anymore. He was seen at one time at a local coffee shop or whatnot, but he's not there anymore. This is all kind of suspicious. Maybe he intentionally dropped out of sight himself. Maybe not. Maybe they did do something to him. Maybe not. We don't know. But the circumstances are suspicious and are questionable. And per this caller over here who got so hostile, is the Watchtower Society capable of doing something violent to somebody? Yes, definitely. Did they do such a thing to Johnny the Bethelite? We don't know. So I'm a constitutionalist, and I'm of the position that if you don't see somebody do something, or if you don't have any evidence, then that's the way it is. That's the bottom line. So I've never heard, like I say, I'm going to reiterate, I've never heard the Watchtower Society come out, or I mean the Six Screens Network. I never heard them come out and just point blank make accusations. Everybody just suspects that something bad happened to them. So I think people ought to pay attention more and try to get their facts straight rather than to jump to conclusions. I think we'll be a lot more better off.
Well, Ken, thank you for that. And I know you love law and you love constitutional law, but in a court of law, sometimes when a prosecutor brings a charge against someone, they might have at times straightforward, perfectly clear evidence that this person did this. Now, there is also in a court of law circumstantial evidence. Circumstances, they also can be questioned. And like you said, I love the word suspicious. That would be it's very suspicious. I can't accuse Watchtower of killing him. It's suspicious to me. But the evidence kind of can at least lead one to think that, whether it's true or not. But in certain aspects in life, even in Mike's world, there's certain conclusions he has drawn, maybe about people he worked with, maybe about people in the past he knew. It doesn't necessarily have to involve murder, but certain things that he just drew a conclusion on without having all of the evidence, and he was somewhat convinced that this happened. That's all. We feel that way. No one's going to change my mind. And another thing even Johnny the Bethelite talked about, which I thought, at times he would say things, and I kind of thought maybe it's not true. Sometimes I did. He mentioned facial recognition. He says, Rick, they have all of these apostates that, do YouTube, and a high profile apostate, so to speak, Johnny said. They have them on facial recognition. And I said, nah, that's even before we even heard much about facial recognition. Now it's pretty popular. This is, 6-7 years ago. So, in fact, more than that, it was actually 10 years ago. We all thought it was really something else, that people could recognize you by your picture and tell who you were. He said Watchtower had that, so I didn't put much credence into it. And in the year 2013, I went down to Watchtower, Brooklyn Heights. They were still there at the world headquarters. And, I said, Dick, Johnny talked about facial recognition, but I don't know if that's really totally true or not. But when I walked through that door at 25 Columbia Heights, I wasn't in that door. I didn't even walk 10 steps. And all of a sudden, there were 3 security guards at Watchtower. They all had the blue suit on with the JW.org, and they surrounded me. And they came right up to me and said, "You're Rick Farron, right?" I mean, I didn't tell them. They just approached me and said, "You're Rick Farron, right?" How did they know that? It was true. facial recognition. And, well, what are you doing here today? I said, well, I came down to see Brother Loesch. I got some thoughts I want to share with him. Of course, I didn't get to first base, but it was true. That's another thing Johnny said that landed up to be true. What do you think, Anmarie?
I just want to add another thing before we conclude here, Mr. Farron. We have had people call up on the program years ago that have actually gotten threats, intimidations, and harassment from Watchtower officials, where they had suspicious things happen to them after they have left the Watchtower and so forth. I don't recall any individuals by name and so forth, but that has happened. So it doesn't rule out them doing something very violent to somebody or so forth. But as I mentioned earlier, we need to speak pursuant to facts, not conclusions or not ideas or anything like that. And I think that's what we've been doing all along. We haven't been outright making any accusations, and that's the way it should be and so forth. So let's just play it by ear and so forth and continue, and hopefully we can maybe we can find out down the road what actually happened to Johnny the Bethelite. Maybe not, but let's just hope for the best down the road.
Well, thank you, Ken. That's well said.
Yeah.
That's well said. Thank you. Always enjoy a nice, calm way you present yourself. Don't you ever change, Ken. You just stay Ken.
Okay. Well, God bless and be with everybody and so forth. And thank you for taking my call. And we'll just keep listening here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Like I said, being a nuts and bolts person, I would look at everything. I pay attention to facts, what I do know in my own mind, what I heard with my own ears. And one thing I know that Johnny told me at least twice, personally told me, that he was so grateful for Susan and Rick, and that he considered them his spiritual parents because he could talk to them about anything. And aside from everything else, I know in my gut that at least Rick would have found out through some way. Johnny would have been able to communicate to Rick and Susan in some way, even if it was through a little letter through snail mail, that he was okay or whatever. But to have absolutely nothing after he called Rick so happy that he made it back to Brooklyn, and then nothing. Nobody falls off the face of the earth unless logic tells me they were put out and hidden. It is really, it's a probability in my mind. At least consider that it is possible, because he was an enemy. He had evidence. He even told Rick, I heard him once on the show, he told Rick that if they ever do anything to me, I have information on them in a safe place that will get out. I bet they found that too, because they are devious. They are devious and evil of the highest order. I put nothing past Watchtower, because again, anything and everything they do or don't do is totally to suit their agenda. And I believe, and I will say it to anybody, if they kill me, I'll still say that I believe they killed him. They killed him. I believe it. And that's what I feel in my gut, because nothing else makes sense. You don't just disappear off the face of the earth for 5 years and then have Dick and Rick go to Brooklyn looking everywhere for him to find the coffee shop where he used to call from. And the person that talked to Rick and Dick say, oh yeah, he came in here all the time, not just once, not just twice. She said he came in all the time, and she even showed Rick and Dick where he sat. It was in a corner at a private table by himself. And he's just gone? No, he loved Rick and Susan too much to not let them know what happened. So how was he not able to communicate? You can't communicate if you don't have a mouth or a mouth to speak with anymore. They did something to him. I feel that. Rick never said anything like that. I did. Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you, Anmarie. Now, did Susan, are you listening, Susan? Did you want to speak up? I thought I saw it light up there. Does anyone have any thoughts on the? I guess Susan does. Go ahead, Susan. You're on with us.
Hi. You know, Mike never spoke to Johnny personally. You know, as a fact that other than when he called during the program, he called you and I, and he called me all the time. I talked to him for hours at a time. The poor kid had nobody to talk to. And then when his mother died of cancer, he was beside himself. He had nobody to talk to because his dad was a Watchtower, right? What was he going to do? And there was too much camaraderie. There was too much love there to just walk away. You wouldn't walk away from your mother and never talk to her again if there was love there. And he had love for you too. I mean, he expressed that all the time, and in private conversations, he told us stuff that he didn't want us to tell anybody else, and we didn't. And he trusted us, and we helped him out of a lot of personal problems. And with as far as Mike is concerned, Anmarie and I, when Mike's mother was dying of cancer, and he said no one from the Kingdom Hall ever bothered to talk to her. Guess who called her? Guess who called Mike? Guess who called his father? It was Anmarie and I. He forgets about that, I know, because it's been a few years since his mom died. But we did. And if we were that evil, why would we even bother, Anmarie and I bother calling his mother, his dad, and talking to them for sometimes almost an hour. So that was more than once. It was a number of times. So I don't know why Mike thinks that Anmarie is so evil, or I'm so evil, or you're so evil, because we try to do good things for people. So, you know, and another thing, the Catholic Church is a religious organization, is it not? Of course, the Watchtower is not as big as the Catholic Church, but the Watchtower claims to be a religious organization. So does the Catholic Church. There's a new movie out now about these cardinals and the Pope, and you and I said we wanted to see it. And there's been other movies that show that the Catholic Church is not a nice organization. So, you know, they do evil things. So do organizations like governments and churches do evil things today? Yeah, they do. They do. And do we have proof 100% that the Catholic Church killed people? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Susan, that's a very good comment, and it kind of tempers everything here. It kind of brings things into perspective. Yes. Now, Mike, go slow. Hold on. We're gonna let Mike come back. We gotta let him talk. But be nice. Be nice.
Say, Rick, there's other possibilities with this. The guy could have died in a car crash or something like that, or I don't know. There's other possibilities. But also, if you know this guy's name, who he was, you can't find out if he's alive or dead. I don't understand.
I talked to the New York City, well, actually, within the Brooklyn police. I talked to them around the time of his disappearance and asked them about missing persons, people that may have been reported missing. I got nothing from them. Okay. Yeah. So.
Well, do you know his name?
I did not know his. Well, I don't want to. I don't know if it was real name or not, but it was a name that was given to me. So I'm
just okay. I guess what I'm not mad, Rick. I just don't. All I'm saying, you know, they're saying, well, I have to come up with proof. I don't have proof. I'm not the one making. I'm not making any allegations. You're telling me they whacked the guy or Anmarie is.
Well,
and I guess because I didn't believe it, I'm a bad guy. I mean, it just sounds irrational. I guess I'm the crazy guy.
I don't, you know, at times you are. You're not crazy all the time, but at times you are. But I love you, Mikey. I think that you have a good head knowledge. But I think also it's good to have someone. I'm glad that you came on today. I think it's good to have someone challenge at least this. But I want you to know that the Watchtower is more evil than you know, Mike. It really is evil. It's bad. Do we have someone else who wants to speak up? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you pretty much touched on my point. This is Thomas Hodson here from Lawrence, Kansas. I was just going to mention the same thing you kind of mentioned there. You did check with the police on this matter. And, I was afraid that it would be kind of hard to really get anything hammered down. For one thing, if they did talk to the Watchtower, they're never going to tell the truth in many cases. So obviously it would have been a pretty tough one to crack to find out anything. But we can always hope and pray that somehow, some way we could find out what happened so we could at least have closure. It really hurts us because I really cared about this guy. He was a swell guy. I had a lot of respect for him to stand up and tell us things that we had a right to know. And he really wanted to live the right way. He really tried to live a good life. He was just a great person. And I always will have a lot of respect for Johnny.
Well, thank you, Thomas. I know you listen to the program so much. You listen to almost every program we ever did since we started 20 years ago. So you got a good understanding of Johnny. You've heard so many things he said. I know you're one of the first to come in the programs every week. You're there, so you have a good understanding of the man. But what happens is so many people that we've been lambasted and picked on and shot at, so to speak. Saying that this guy's not real. But they're only getting little snippets, and then they're asking questions to Johnny that you couldn't answer. It had nothing to do with him not being a legitimate Bethelite, but stupid questions that they would ask him that made no sense, and then they would nail him on that. But thank you for calling in. Thank you. Yeah. Well, there you go, Anmarie. What do you have to say?
Okay. Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gilbert.
Go ahead, dear.
Hey, so Rick, just real quick, you're talking about the facial recognition stuff, and I believe in conspiracies, and I think that conspiracies, contrary to what the other callers are saying, I think they're healthy and they're good because we know how evil people work, and the conspiracies, the ideas, the opinions that we have, that's really what all they are, is they lead you, like the police officers, they have a conspiracy, they think that, you're guilty, I'm guilty, and then they keep going with that feeling, that conspiracy, until finally they find the evidence. So no, I believe in conspiracies. And going back with the facial recognition, all of the Kingdom Halls, Rick, have TVs. But the TVs, the elders did not go to Walmart and buy those televisions. There's not a Kingdom Hall in the United States of America who the elders can produce a receipt that says, we bought this TV at Walmart. You know why? Because Watchtower gives them the TVs. Because when you go to the mall, the shopping center, you see all of those TVs at the stores, at the clothing stores and whatever stores. But those have cameras that the security department is looking at. And so security can look at people through those TVs, and they're being monitored, and they have every right because it's their property. But here's the point. So when Watchtower gets an alert on the TV that somebody at 2:00 in the morning entered a Kingdom Hall, Watchtower is not going to call the police. They're going to know why those elders are at the Kingdom Hall, and they'll turn on the cameras. They'll keep it quiet. And kind of the same thing happened with Johnny the Bethelite. I think is that they knew who he was. They can and they kept quiet because Watchtower always wants to know: is there more than one Johnny? Where's John? How many other people are associated with him? So they let people like that have their time, because they're also trying to spy to find out if he's a lone actor or is he acting in with the whole group of people. And that happened with Raymond France. They were trying to find out all of the people that Raymond France had dinner with, all of the people Raymond France was associated with. And so yeah, your previous callers were saying, well, you're crazy, Gilbert, because you don't have evidence. No, I go to the shopping center. I see the televisions. I see the security guards arrest people. You're like, how do they find out? They got the TVs right there. And so that's what Watchtower. So this thing about facial recognition, Watchtower has that and a lot more. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, it's a good 2 cents. It's at least worth a quarter, at least. I mean, very, very good. Thank you. Very good job. Well, I'll tell you, Anmarie, you know, what amazes me, what really amazes me is in the ex-witness world, what a diverse community. Now, we all can't be on the same page. That I do know. I don't expect everyone to be on the same page that I'm on. And, you know, we have different groups of people having different thoughts. And that's what's really great about the ex-witness world. And, you know, we kind of always leaned, you know, we bring things up here. For example, we have a program on our Six Screens Network, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, with Fritz Springmeier. And, you know, a lot of people, they hear the Illuminati and they head for the mountains, so to speak. You know, they don't think it exists. They think it's a bunch of baloney and what have you. But, you know, there's many witnesses getting out that do, you know, they're ex-witnesses. They believe in it. So what we do at Six Screens, we let everybody have a voice, whether I totally agree with it or not. I want to hear everything. I want to hear everything from satanic ritual abuse. I want to hear things that the Illuminati may have been involved with the Watchtower. I want to hear all about Freemasonry. I want to hear about it all. And because we've taken that approach, it's been like the National Enquirer is what we've been charged with. I want to hear everything there possibly can be to know about the Watchtower and how evil they are. And after 20 years of doing this program, I have to tell you, I've heard things I've had a hard time believing, but at least I let the people speak up and talk about it. It's just been, this is a more evil organization, friends, than we even know. We don't know the darkest side of the Watchtower. I think you'll agree, Anmarie.
I do agree. And I do remember Johnny mentioning one other person that disappeared probably about 3 or 4 years after he was coming on the Six Screens. He was very, very upset one time, and you asked him what was wrong. And you said one of the Bethelites that worked with him had a girlfriend that he loved very much who was also at Bethel. And out of nowhere, she suddenly disappeared. Nobody ever knew what happened to her. They tried to find her. They put out a missing persons report. Nobody could find out what happened to her. And I remember how distraught Johnny was. And he's talking about his best friend. This was his best friend at Bethel, whose girlfriend just mysteriously vanished. We cannot say we know this didn't happen. We know they would never. Hey, if they're willing to do this evil and this horrible thing and that horrible thing, accuse a 3-year-old girl of being promiscuous because her grandfather was molesting her and blame the 3-year-old, you know, there is nothing in my mind that they will not stoop to. Nothing. What's to stop them? Evil does not worry about things when they know they can get away with it. And that's just a fact of life. We've seen just regular, everyday people who have done horrible, horrible things and gotten away with it. And then maybe a few years later, they'll get caught, like the Jehovah's Witness who killed his wife and buried her, I think, in the garden or somewhere so that he could marry somebody else. And when he got caught, finally, after years, and this was on either A&E or Dateline, I still have it on my recorder, he said, well, I couldn't divorce her or I would have been disfellowshipped. That's why he said he killed her. And this is not an isolated type of incident. They do what they do to suit what they want. And this is an evil organization. Do you think evil has any boundaries? No, that would require some sense of morality, some sense of character, some sense of right and wrong. Something that says, gee, I can't do that. That's going too far. No, I don't put anything past this evil organization.
Anmarie, I'll tell you what, it's so good that you can speak up and we can voice our thoughts on it. I was talking this morning, we had a program on a little earlier with Scott Walton out of North Carolina. Scott Walton, by the way, he's a member here of the Six Screens doing his program, the Knowing God program. He works for the Samaritan's Purse. That's Billy Graham's son that runs that. And you see him on TV, and they really help people. And Scott was telling me he's working the hotline this week for the Samaritan's Purse for all the poor people in North Carolina and South Carolina and down south that have been hurt by the hurricanes. And he was saying some of the stories he's hearing is just absolutely unbelievable. But the Samaritan's Purse is helping these people. He's doing a good job. He loves working there. He's a good man. But the point I want to make about all of this is there was a woman I got information from this week. And she was in North Carolina, and I mentioned it last night on the program. And she was in North Carolina. That's where she lived. I think it was in Asheville, where they really got hit hard by that Hurricane Helene. Was it Helene? I think it might have been the other one. I'm not sure. But whatever hurricane it was, it hit North Carolina. It really was wicked. So the woman was saying, in the stuff that I got here from her, is that her husband is not even one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He's not even studying, but he doesn't jump down their throat. But she was a Jehovah's Witness, but she's fading away. She wasn't disfellowship. She wasn't disassociated. So anyways, their home was decimated. It was gone. The hurricane just blew it away, so to speak. So her and her husband and their 3 little children, they have no money. They're out of work. Their car is an old broken down car, just barely able to get out of the hurricane zone. And they're going to go up to be with their family. She didn't mention the state because she didn't want people to know who she was and what have you. But anyways, they were going to go up to where her mother was, and hopefully to get some comfort and maybe even some shelter from the people from her hometown. So she got up there, and her mother, who was a staunch Jehovah's Witness, she locked the door. So she changed the locks, is really what she did. So, because she knew her daughter might have had keys, and because she was fading away, and really, she wasn't a full-blown apostate. She just didn't want to, associate like she was. And so the mother changed the locks so that she couldn't get in the house. I mean, this is the type of stuff that goes on. So no wonder why we hypothesize. No wonder why we start thinking things that regular people wouldn't think. We hear this stuff, Anmarie. It's terrible. Even some of the stories last night that were being told on your program. Unreal.
Yeah, sadly, no matter how unreal it is, tends to be real sometimes.
It's hard to even believe that. I can't believe that a mother would change the locks on her daughter just because she didn't have the same feeling toward the religious organization the mother belongs to. That is it's cruel. It's unusual punishment. Imagine how you'd feel. Here you got 3 little kids. Your car is broken down, so to speak. She said it was in the shop. They needed help. They were looking for help. And your mother, you love your mother. Even though she might be another religion, your mother could kind of help you. She locks the doors. She changes the locks. Jeez, that's pretty bad. Pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything they won't stoop to. It's all about, quote unquote, loyalty to Jehovah. But we really know it's all about loyalty to the party, just like in the days of the Gestapo. Loyalty to the party above family, even above your own life. It's just that way in the Watchtower.
Anmarie, you got a lot of people calling into the network here. If anyone would like to voice their thoughts on what they heard on this program today, why don't you hit *6 on your telephone pad, and that'll bring you in. I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'm sure you can add to the conversation. So go ahead and do that. Hit *6. Let us know what you think. We've been talking a lot here today. We talked about Johnny the Bethelite. Go ahead, 717. You are on the Six Screens Telenetwork. Go ahead.
I want to say, well, that with Johnny the Bethelite, I tell you, the way you mention it's serious.
You get that feeling, Dallas. You get that feeling that's serious. Now, did you detect in our voice like we were making this stuff up?
No, I wouldn't doubt it, but I saw it as a warning right there. That's the way I heard it as. But it sounds it's scary.
Now, do you believe the organization is an evil organization, Dallas?
Absolutely, I do. It's the most vile one in the whole world.
You know, we sometimes correlate the mafia to the Watchtower, but you know, I don't want to disrespect the mafia here. I say the Watchtower is worse. I do.
That more like the Taliban is what they're like.
I like that. I like that. Yes, they are more like the Taliban. I mean, at least the mafia, you know, if they send a hitman out, usually the person deserves it. You know, they're a fellow criminal of some type. But in the Watchtower, man, they punish people for nothing, for having sideburns, for wearing clothing they don't approve of. People are punished all over the place in the Watchtower. At least the mafia has a little respect for people, you know?
And I think whether they want the women to wear burqas like they or something where they can't even see their eyes, that's what I'm wondering.
Well, don't give them any ideas, Dallas. Don't give them any ideas. They're all over the map as it is. Well, thank you, Dallas, for coming in. Yeah.
And sometimes those guards, I was thinking that they are armed with guns on them.
Yeah. Unreal. Well, Dallas, it's always good to hear from you. You're a good man. Now you just keep staying Dallas.
I'll let the next person go.
Thank you, Dallas. Go ahead. It looks like we've got, what's it, 914. You're on with us. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, how are you? Hope everything's well.
Thank you.
I'd like to believe the story of Johnny's true, and I wouldn't put it past them. But just for argument's sake, you know, why? Or I'm not sure. Maybe she has. Why hasn't Barbara Anderson received any threats? If you know she was involved in all the right department, and she knew what she knows. Was she ever threatened as well? I'm not sure about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question. Was she ever what?
Was she ever threatened?
Barbara Anderson was never threatened, no, but she didn't offer any information while she was there. I mean, she was a Bethelite, but when she's come out, I mean, she is, you know, people say sometimes, well, who's the biggest apostate in the world? I'll tell you, Barbara Anderson is. I mean, she has exposed them more than anyone. But see, here's what would happen. If Barbara Anderson was found out in the parking lot in the driveway of her house, I'm sure an investigation would take place in the Watchtower. They're not going to come after people that they know. I went to the police department right here and told them what I do. And they put the Watchtower down in my bio in case anything ever happens to me. It's a starting point. So they're not going to, for the most part, if you're a highfalutin apostate, I don't think they can come after you. But someone like on the inside at the time, yeah, you follow that?
Yeah, I get that. And, you know, just maybe a little off topic, thank you for answering. But I think definitely we are seeing them with all the selling of the Kingdom Hall, they are going towards the digital and just running everything through that new facility they're building up in Ramapo. And I see that. Maybe they'll take the money and run. Who knows?
Well, you know, these guys are known for nastiness. They're known for it. And I'm glad you're getting all of this, caller, because there's so many people that don't really see it. But it's like right in front of us all. We're seeing this all take place. Now, have you been out of the Watchtower for a while?
Yeah, it's about 10 years now.
Well, good.
Unfortunately, I wasn't. I didn't get out because I found stuff out. I was actually doing some immoral stuff, and I felt upset. And then it wasn't until I was out that I was able to start doing research and able to see what the real face of Watchtower is. To me, what sticks is just you can get them sometimes if you tell them when you go to court. They never tell you, oh, you can't listen to what the defense has to say. No, you have to listen to both sides of the story. You can't be like Watchtower and say, oh, no, don't look at this, don't research this, don't look at that. So that's what helped me out a lot. And, the internet is a great equalizer. So that's their own downfall.
Well, we want to thank
Brother,
you.
is there a name we can call you? Is there a name we can call you by, brother?
Oh,
Excuse me.
I've called before. It's Jay from New York.
Oh, thank you, Jay. Excuse me, Rick.
Yeah, in fact, I do remember Jay now. We also have another Jay from New York that calls in.
Right.
Yeah, it's what we've got here. And, people say, come on, Rick, lay off it and stop beating up on the Watchtower. I hate to say it, but it's almost like some type of a mission. I think a lot of these ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I think there's like a mission they are on. And I say, what is the obsession with this? What is what keeps the adrenaline flowing? This organization has been so hurtful. Many of the things in the 20 years of doing this program that I have heard, so some of the stuff I don't know if I could believe at all. But I'll tell you, there was a woman, I would say about 15, 16 years ago, and she called in from a car wash. And she worked at the car wash, and she struggled, and she worked so hard all of her life because she was abused sexually when she was a little girl, 3 years old. And this woman told the audience, I had a hard time even believing it. I believe it now that I've heard so much about this organization. But this woman told the audience that she was out in Seattle. I believe that's where it took place. And she said that when she was a little girl, 3 years old, the elders passed her around the congregation, having sex with her. They passed her around. This is her words, like a football. I really my heart sunk when I heard that. And I'm saying, do I believe this or not? At the time, I didn't know if I could believe it, but boy, I believe it now after hearing all of the stories I've been hearing about the Watchtower and the covering up of child sexual abuse. So the stuff I've heard, yes.
I also wanted to mention before I did leave the Watchtower, I did participate in the construction of Tuxedo, where the new headquarters are at. It was an old paper factory, and I was in my local RBC, and we were in demolition and labor, and I was up there right when we were starting to break ground and take down that old factory and make it into what it is today. I was there for about maybe 6 months, and then I faded.
Well, good for you. Well, good for you, Jay. I'm proud of you, buddy. Now, don't be a stranger. Come back and see you soon. Thank you for weighing in, though. Really appreciate it.
I will, no problem.
Thank you, Jay. Does 920 want to come on? 920, you're on with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a story. I'm Jane Doe again from last night. Yeah, I live in Wisconsin, and our congregation is right on the edge of different circuit in Wisconsin. And my husband worked in the factory in the town 20 miles away, which is in a different circuit. So then, anyway, this is probably about 20 years ago. We had a family that started coming to our Kingdom Hall. The husband was disfellowship, but the wife was not baptized, and they had a bunch of kids. So then, anyway, they were assigned. I think the husband finally got reinstated. But anyway, we were in the same group on Tuesday night for the book study. And so then on weekends, we would meet at the house, which was out in the country. And I got to know the wife. I think she was baptized at this time. But anyway, the husband was reinstated, and So anyway, I got to know the wife, and she worked at what would be Spectrum today, cable company. At that time, it was Charter. Anyway, she was working there before she got married to her husband. So then, anyway, her husband gets reinstated, and so then she gets baptized. So then they put her on the platform at the assembly, at the circuit assembly. They put her on the platform because Pioneer from our congregation had started a study with her, and that when she started studying with her and she got baptized. Okay, so anyway, I'm working out in service with her, and I find out that she was working at the cable company. And so they put her on the platform as an experience of somebody, coming in from the territory. And so what she was saying in her experience was that somebody she worked with started talking to her about the truth. And so then I'm saying to myself, okay, so your husband worked at the same place, and he's the witness, and he's disfellowshipped, and so, you're not supposed to gossip about anybody. So then, since my husband worked in that town, in the factory in that town, which was not in our circuit, I got real curious, and I thought, well, that's odd. They were both working in the same place, the cable company. They were both working in the same place. He strikes up a conversation with her, and they're living together, and now they're married, and they got all these kids. So I got real curious about it, and it just didn't make sense to me. Why was he disfellowshipped? And then, this was his second wife. So my husband worked in that town, and so then he was friends with the people in that congregation, which is in a different circuit. So then I said, okay, I'm so curious about this. Why would they put her on the platform when she's working with this man that this is his second wife? He's disfellowshipped. So I got real curious, and we met with some friends, witness friends in that congregation. So what happened was he left his witness wife for her. This was her third marriage. They were living together when the sister from our congregation got their house in territory, started a study with her, and then, like I said, that was her third marriage. That was his second marriage. So he left his wife to marry her. They were living together before they got married. I wrote to the society about it because I thought, why in the world would they put her up on the platform? Because this is a different circuit. And so nobody in our congregation knew any of this. The only reason I figured it out was because I was working in service with her when she was telling me that she worked at the same cable company as her husband before they got married. I put two and two together, and so I wrote to the society, and I said, why would they put her up there on the platform? They wrote back to me right away, and they said, well, we're going to look into it. And so then they met when the circuit servant came to our congregation. The next time he came, he met with me and him and the Colby, and he says, I looked into it. He says, and I would do the very same thing. That's what he said. I would do the same thing over again. Now, it wasn't me that got hurt. I mean, it was the wife. It was the first wife. She was so hurt by this. I mean, it spread through, like I said, we're on the edge of a different circuit. They're on a different circuit. It spread I can't say where I'm located, but it spread throughout that circuit what they did to her, putting the woman that broke up her marriage on the platform as an experience coming from the territory. That's how, this was like 20 years ago. And, I mean, I couldn't, and you can't tell anybody, you know, because in our congregation, oh, everybody was so happy when she got baptized, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's so twisted. 20 years ago, I should have walked away because it's not right. It's so horrible what they did to his first wife.
That is terrible. And then they used her on the stage. Now, what would be your take, sister? What are you extracting from this? What is the
what
most?
I get from that was because in our congregation, see, when they moved here, he was disfellowshipped and she was not baptized, and so then, you know, because you can't gossip. And like I said, the only reason I found out about it was because I worked in service with her when she told me that she worked at the same place as her husband before they got married, you know, and they put her up on the platform and she's saying, oh, somebody I worked with, you know, he was a witness, or no, I don't think she said he. She didn't say he was a witness. She said the witness talked to her and got her interested.
That is absolutely nuts.
And then the circuit overseer meets with me and tells me he would have done it. He says, I looked into it, and he says, I would have still done it anyway. And then to top it off, okay, so she's in our congregation, and the brother in our congregation that recommended to put her up on the platform, she's in our, because, you know, she was in our book study group. And so she's at the Kingdom Hall one Saturday when we were meeting for service, and she was complaining about his ex-wife. And the brother that put her up on the platform, he was sympathetic with her. It's like, well, I mean, it's like, talk about worldly. I mean, I couldn't even think of worldly people that would do such an awful thing.
Well, you know what?
That's how desperate they are to put experiences up on the platform.
Well, what that does, what that shows me, Jane, is this is more evil than we think. I mean, really, for an organization that portrays themselves as being the only loving organization on the planet, who portrays themselves as following in the footsteps of Jesus, to pull something off like that, unbelievable. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me talk.
Well, you're very welcome. We enjoy you talking here. Now, you go by, it's Jane. I think you might also go by Bonnie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I come sometimes, but that's good. Okay, so what would you rather be called?
Probably Jane.
All right.
Just in case somebody knows me.
All right.
Because they recognize my voice.
Oh, just curious now. I mean, you don't have to tell me, but my wife is from Wisconsin. My wife is from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know.
Now, she lived in, well, not too far from Kenosha, if I get the town she lived in. But you can tell me if you feel uncomfortable. You don't have to.
I have two kids that live in Kenosha.
Yeah, my wife didn't live there. I forget the name of the town she lived in. But
Racine, maybe?
no, it was right on the lake. It was near Milwaukee. I think it was Milwaukee, somewhere around Milwaukee. Yeah.
Hey, Rick?
Yeah.
It's in Mequon, Janesville.
Janesville.
I don't even know if you know the
Yeah, Janesville.
No, Mequon, Janesville. Mequon, Janesville.
Does that ring a bell with you?
Well, I know that's where we met for the circuit assembly was in Janesville. Mequon is near Milwaukee, maybe? Is it? Or?
Yeah, it is. It's near Milwaukee, and I had my first husband, his sister lived in Janesville, so we stayed at her house all the time to go to the assembly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just like Anmarie, she said she's got 20 stories. Oh my God, I got a good 20 stories too that are just as evil.
Well, you hold some of those stories. Yeah, next week Anmarie's coming on. She's going to do a series on Watchtower stories. So make sure you're doing it next week. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, well, that's so good to hear.
Next week. Wait,
Oh.
not next week, Jane Doe. In 2 weeks. We do the show every other Saturday. So maybe you can write down those stories because we'd love to hear them. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, good. Oh, thank you for saying that, Anmarie. I get mixed up. Yeah, so anyways, you're on I'm going to keep this program going. We're having so much fun. I'm going to let the news go. We talked about it last night, but let's just talk. This is good. We're having a good conversation. Everybody is happy today. It's a Sunday. It's a beautiful day here in New England. And, we're just telling our stories and seeing what your feelings are about the Watchtower. Of course, Anmarie started the program off, her and I together, calling the Watchtower extremely evil. And, we don't really change our position on that. We're going to continue to call it that. But when you hear people calling it like that, like Jane Doe just said, when you hear people calling in and they voice their thoughts on what they've seen. So what she saw was something really out of the question that should never have taken place. And then for the circuit overseer to kind of sanction it and say he'd do the same thing, something's pretty weird about that. Something's very weird. So what do you have to say? We got a lot of people listening in right now. Is there anyone like to speak up and say something? Go ahead, just hit *6. We'd love to hear you. Or if you're hearing us on Facebook or YouTube, you see the telephone number. Give us a call. Let us know what you think.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Hi, Rick. My name is Cheryl. I live in Colorado.
Hi, Cheryl.
I've never called in. I've been listening to you for a couple of years, and I just wanted to call and tell you thank you so much for all that you do and all the time you spend on your activities. I just am very impressed.
Well, thank you.
I was in Watchtower for 35 years. I joined as an adult, and when I was in. And over time, I started seeing things that were puzzling and disturbing, and I would just, set them in the closet like everybody does. And 6 years ago, at age 71, I woke up. And since then, I've just been so disturbed by everything I know now that I didn't know then. And it's important that we all have a voice in this because it is an evil. It is true. It's evil. I didn't used to think that was an appropriate word, but I do now. So.
Well, tell me, Cheryl, I mean, what would you say? And I know it's kind of hard just to spare the moment, but in the many years, of 33 years, I believe you said you were in, what would you say was one of the most bizarre things that you saw in the Watchtower? Does anything come to mind?
Well, recently, this is the most bizarre thing, and it's something I saw recently. I didn't see it. Well, I don't think I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses when this Watchtower came out. And I don't know if it was on your program or someone else's, but recently someone was bringing up this paragraph in a Watchtower, and I believe it was September 15th. It was either 1973. It was probably 1973, not 1975. But anyway, they were talking about masturbation, and there was an article in there that said parents shouldn't stroke the genitals of their babies to keep them quiet. And I just was back. I'm going, wait a minute, who of us would even think of doing that? And so I thought, now if I'd have been a witness back then, because I'm pretty sure I wasn't. If I was, I missed completely that article. But I thought, would I'd had the sense to leave then? Because that was just appalling to me. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because we all know how obsessed the organization is with sexual matters. And I became aware of that over time. I was always more puzzled than disturbed at that time. But, it's so true that the leaders have to be, their perspective is warped. And I don't know how they manage to get a group of men that all think alike like that, because I keep saying, surely they're going to appoint someone who says, wait a minute, we got to rethink this, brothers. But no, they just keep choosing people that think just like them. And I think
it's baffling to me. I guess birds of a feather flock together.
Well, Cheryl, that's interesting because I do remember even talking about that one night here on JW World News, and that is, see, that got my attention and got the attention of a lot of other people. I don't know who would do that. I would think only a perverted person. But then we had a person call in that is a former Jehovah's Witness. Now, this didn't happen to him from a witness person, but when he was a young boy, a young baby in the hospital, I mean, really young, he got burned when he was just a little baby, and they had rushed him into hospital. And there was a nurse that did that to him and really messed him up with sexual perversion. Until this day, I don't see where anyone would do that to a little kid. But he says that really was disturbing. But I don't in any way, I mean, for them to put that in a publication and for them to suggest that, well, what does the normal average person think when they jump to that conclusion? There's something weird about that, right? Jeez.
Well, I would think so. And I just, like I say, I think I was not in the Watchtower at that time, but I was just, it was just another example of their, I don't know what the word is, but it's very warped. And even their decisions, just their decisions, little ones and big ones, like when they decided to tell everyone it was okay to wear beards, and Brother Let, instead of saying, well, I know they used the governing body has decided a lot, but instead of saying we're going to make a change, he said, we want to clarify that it's okay to wear beards. And I thought, what? Are you kidding? You have never said it was okay. In fact, it was just the opposite. And I thought that was so slimy. Just another example of where they can't be honest. And it just makes me sick. I hate it. And I'm very fortunate because I only have one family member who's still a witness, and she lives out of state, so we don't keep in touch much anyway. But I was one of the lucky ones. I just faded, and it was no problem because even though all my friends at the Kingdom Hall are now shunning me, and that was hurtful, but I just kind of decided it had to be that way because I wasn't willing to be part of a group that's so sick. And I'm really embarrassed now when I look back because I had so many people always telling me, you're in a cult. And of course, I would just defend the Watchtower to no end and say, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Because I always believed in most of the doctrines, not all of them, but most of them I did agree with. And so when I finally realized I had been a cult member, I was just reeling. I thought, oh my gosh, all my friends from, my hometown and whatnot were right all along. And so now I'm embarrassed about it, but I would be more embarrassed if I hadn't jumped off the chariot. So I'm really glad I left, and I have no regrets at all.
Well, good for you. Now, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd like to say I got some beautiful books here I want to send you. So if you send me your address, if you feel comfortable, I'll send you these books. I got some beautiful books here that I've been giving away to a new caller, and I always like that. So if you send me your address to jwworldnews@gmail.com. I'll send you the books out, Cheryl. Yeah, you really, because I appreciate you coming on here today.
Okay, and speaking of books, I just want to say I recently relocated, and I did give a lot of literature away when I moved, but I still have boxes of old literature, and I've tried to find a place to recycle it without luck because most of them are the hardbound books. And I'm just wondering, does any of your resources know what to do? Because the bookstore here, they won't recycle them, and the library won't recycle them. And I hate to just throw them in the trash. We're talking a big box of books, old literature.
Well, if anyone listening in, I've got so many. In fact, I have a storage unit with just books in it. I've got so many. I've got the largest library of Watchtower publications on the East Coast of the United States. But if there's anyone listening in that would like some books. Now you'll have to pay the shipping. Cheryl's going to be nice enough to give you the books, but you got to pay the shipping. And when you're shipping books, I found out too, it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. For example, when I first started sending books out here at the 6 Screens, they were charging me 10, 11, 12 bucks for a book to send. And then my wife told me, no, if you tell them it's a book, they'll give it to you cheaper. And I couldn't believe it. Some of the books I send out now only cost me $3 or $4. So if you would like, Cheryl has these books, and if you would like these books, just pay the shipping and she'll give them to you. Right, Cheryl?
Yep. I'd like to get rid of them.
All right. Now,
I don't know who wants them because.
Well, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Have you tried selling some on Facebook Marketplace or on like eBay?
Well, I don't do social media.
You don't, okay? Because you got some public. Some of the just give you an idea. Do you have any interlinears? The interlinear, the purple one.
I do think I have one of those. I'm not real sure, but I do think I have one.
Well, yeah.
It's an old book.
Yeah, well, if you have one of those, that book's worth about $75 to $100.
You're kidding.
No.
Hey, I don't understand. I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, no. In fact, you'd be surprised. Well, it's an apostate book, but Crisis of Conscience by Raymond Franz. That book on.
Yeah, I have that.
That book right now on eBay, or at least I've seen it on Amazon. On Amazon, it was selling for $200.
Wow.
So
well, I'm glad I got mine when I did.
Yeah,
I didn't pay that kind of
well, you hold on to, if you have, in fact, what I would do if I were you, I'd hold on to your Revelation books, and I would hold on to another book. Well, those interlinears, if you have that's a very valuable. That's one of the ones that's bringing good money on eBay and on Amazon. But if you like to, what you can do, if you want to, write to me, give me your address, or at least your email. Give me your email, and then if someone's interested in those books, I can let you know. But you make them pay the shipping. Don't pay the shipping. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All
right. Well, thank you, Rick, and it was nice speaking to you. And I'll be listening.
Well, thank you. Now, don't you be a stranger. You come back and see us, okay?
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Bye. Well, that's Cheryl. So, Anmarie, what do you think? What do you think, Anmarie?
I think this is a great show. One thing I love about this show, that you have set aside ex-Jehovah's Witnesses share their Watchtower story, is that anything can be brought up. If somebody wants to share their story or an experience, they're free to. And it can also include any conversation that comes up. Everyone is free to chime in and share their thoughts and their opinions and what they know. And it's very informative. And I think it's so awesome that Cheryl got out at 71 years old. And now I assume she's about 77. And good for her. And more we're hearing of older ones waking up, some in their 80s. We heard of one who was 90 years old. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, isn't it, my brother?
Well, it is, Anmarie. And I'm going to tell you, too, there's going to be a lot of emotions that flow through one's feelings when they leave at an older age, especially if they've been in for a long time. I know even myself, I was in for 50 years. And when I decided that's it, I want nothing to do, boy, that's an emotional roller coaster. You feel things that you never felt before. Am I leaving the truth? What if this is the truth? Well, what if I get, what if God hates me? All of these thoughts go through your mind, but I give anyone courage that says, nope, I figured it out. I don't want nothing to do with these bums. Unreal. Well, you're on our program here. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses share their story of being in the Watchtower. Anmarie is a great woman. She hosts the program. I hope I haven't been hogging it too much on her, but I found it very, very fascinating today. Did you have a thought? Anybody out there want to, we got about 5 minutes. Would anyone like to jump in here and give us your thoughts? Do you think we're overrating the Watchtower by calling it evil? Do you think that we are making things up that we shouldn't? You know, when you hear these stories, I don't think people are going to come in and make stories up. They're not. But I'm sure if you've been a witness for even a week, we had a girl on here not too long ago. Her name was Courtney. She went to the Kingdom Hall for the first time. She was a poor girl. They didn't have any money. She didn't. She had a boyfriend. They had no money. Actually, a husband. They had no money. And she was invited to a Kingdom Hall meeting for the first time. And she didn't have a lot of clothes to wear in the closet. So all she had was a skirt, a halfway decent skirt, but it had a slit up the side. And she had some big boots she would wear. And she had a blouse that was low cut, but she put like a scarf over it. And that's all she had. And she went to the Kingdom Hall for the first time. And some sisters cornered her in the bathroom, in the women's room, and said she looked like a prostitute and she shouldn't dress like that coming to the meeting. This was the first time. You want to talk about an evil organization? I can't imagine. And she said, well, this is all I have. I'm poor. I don't have a lot of clothes. Well, you look like a prostitute, they said. Can you imagine that? Terrible. You heard that, Anmarie.
Oh, yes, I did. So sad. The first time I actually decided, okay, I'll go to the meeting after the sisters came to my house in 1975 in January and told me if I didn't go back to Jehovah, the organization, that not only was I going to be killed by Jehovah, but that my children, little tiny children playing on the floor right beside me, they told me that my children were going to be killed and that their blood would be on my hands. And before I could even speak, because I went into a panic attack practically, because that's what I had been taught all my life. And the sister that was the main lady talking to me pointed to my belly. I was pregnant with my fourth child. And she said, and that baby that's growing inside you, that baby's going to die too. So what are you going to do? So I literally, over time, going against my gut, forced myself to go to a meeting. And the only thing I had that would be semblance to a dress, because all I wore were jeans and shirts, I had a short little mini skirt with a matching top. That was the style in those days. And that's all I had to wear. But I did have a big maxi coat, and I wore that. And everybody stared at me the entire meeting because my skirt was short. And I remember hanging my head being judged, and they were all staring at me and then whispering to each other. And of course, later I kept going to the meetings and I was called a whore and a slut and just all kinds of things. But this is sadly an ongoing story, this judgment, this criticism, this picking on others is just awful. And it seems that the sisters, by and large, tend to be the worst.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Oh, hi, Rick. Yeah, this is John in KC,
Yes, John.
Kansas City.
Yes, John.
Yeah, I think this is about, my second time I've joined in, and I wanted to say, first of all, to Anmarie, you did an interview of me, about a month or so ago, and I always love hearing your voice. It's it's so reassuring, and I don't know, I feel silly saying that, but I just enjoy hearing you talk, and you're such a nice person, first of all.
Oh.
But yeah, I was in the organization, I guess, officially 50 years. And I was inactive for many years, but I'm so glad I'm out. It's just the feeling is just wonderful. I just knew something was wrong years ago, and I just couldn't put my finger on it, And it was just like the Kingdom Hall was kind of like a lodge or a club, and if you weren't in the right family or so forth, you just kind of felt left out. And that's how I always felt. And, but listening, to the programs here, I discovered it not too long ago. And it was amazing because, as we know, for years, they made us feel guilty even if we question anything they said. So, I don't know. I just had to say that. You're never too young. You're never too old to get out. Because I'm 72 right now. And I just wish I had heard these broadcasts about 20 years ago.
Well, you sound so young, John, and I think that when you actually are able to walk away from the Watchtower, however you had to do it, once you realize that you're free and you start to realize you can use your own mind to make your own decisions, to think for yourself without constant direction from the Watchtower and without permission from the Watchtower and without worrying about people gossiping about your business, without worrying about being reported to the elders, even though you may suffer loss of friends and family, even though you may be shunned, you still realize that you can breathe freely, that you can live freely. And we are so blessed. And I think it helps us not to feel so old because we're not so burdened and dragged down and tired and feeling like you just have to do more and do more. No matter how hard you push yourself, it's just never enough. Did you ever feel that way, John?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I was very depressed, and I just always felt like I, wasn't good enough. And I think most witnesses feel that way. And I just felt, I got to the point where really I really didn't feel, why is life worth living anymore if you're going to feel like this, And, but now it's like, I have a reason to go on. And I just, I kind of speak my mind, when I run into former witnesses. I was just talking to a witness the other day who called me from Wisconsin, and he used to live. Yeah. And, he claims to be of the anointed. And we used to be fairly good friends. Matter of fact, he's a musician, and we kind of used to, play together. And we had a little band for a very short time. And I just told him, I just couldn't keep it in. He called me out of the blue, and I just said, I said, I can't do this anymore, And I got to the point, I guess, where I was saying too much that he says, well, I think I'm going to have to keep this conversation, cut this short. I thought, like, well, that's probably the last time I hear from him. But, it's brainwashed, you can't deal with stupid, you can't fix it. I don't know. I shouldn't condemn people, but, I got no time for that anymore. I've renewed friendships with people that, even former witnesses, and it's just so liberating because I just feel like, nobody is looking over my shoulder. It's just, because I think a lot of times, when at least I thought like, well, what if the elders find out? I don't give a hoot what they think now,
Yeah.
Well, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And I'm glad I remember you telling a story here in Anmarie's program, and really, I'm so glad you spoke up even today. I wish we had some more time, Anmarie, because still so many people want to come in, but I guess we got to move to the next program. But I want to thank you for coming on, sir. Really, I appreciate that, and all the people. Anmarie, what would be your closing statements?
Well, I'd like to have my closing statements, if you would indulge me, from Ephesians 5 from the New World Translation. It talks about not having anything to do with a greedy person or being an idolater, which has no place or inheritance in the kingdom of Christ or of God. And verse 6 says, let no man deceive you with empty words. Isn't that what the governing body says? It goes on to say, for because of such things, the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience. Hasn't the Watchtower disobeyed God? Verse 7, therefore do not be sharers with their wicked works, for you were once in darkness. Remember, Jesus said that he was the light of the world, and if we walk with him, we would not be in darkness, but would possess the light of life. That's John 8, verse 12. He said, for you were once in darkness, but you are now light in connection with the Lord. Go on walking as children of light, for the fruitage of the light consists of every sort of goodness and rightfulness and truth. We know Watchtower has nothing to do with goodness, righteousness, and truth. Verse 10 says, keep on making sure what is acceptable to the Lord, and stop sharing in the unfruitful works that belong to the darkness. Rather, expose them for what they are, for the things they do in secret are shameful even to mention. So then it goes on to say, lastly, therefore it is said, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and the Christ will shine upon you. That says a lot. Awake, wake up from your stupor of being in the Watchtower, from being under their indoctrination. And that's why you're asleep. You wake up to the truth, to the reality. And it says, arise from the dead. We were dead mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. If we awake from the stupor of being in Watchtower indoctrination, then the scripture says the Christ, which is Jesus, will shine upon you. This is from the New World Translation, Ephesians 5, verses 5 through 14. And this is something I hope that you will all take the time to consider, because this is what Rick's show is all about, exposing the Watchtower for what they are. We want to thank everyone who called in. We want to thank our very animated Mike. We want to thank Rick and Susan. We want to thank Ken from Michigan, Thomas from Lawrence, Kansas. We want to thank Gilbert. We want to thank Dallas, Jay from New York, Jane Doe from Wisconsin, and our first-time caller, Cheryl from Colorado. And lastly, we want to thank John. This is only the second time he called in, and we're so glad he did. After 50 years in the Watchtower, 72 years old, and he is free. Thank you so much, all of you that called in. We need to go back to Rick.
Well, thank you, Anmarie, and well said. Thank those as well for coming in. Now, I want to say, don't you guys go anywhere. We have got the Christian court coming up. Now, let me just tell you what we're going to be discussing just briefly. You know, I have often thought about this, even when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and now that I'm a Christian. Are there territorial spirits? What do I mean by that? In other words, is there certain geographical locations that the spirits like to inhabit? Well, we're going to talk about territorial spirits. Are there territorial spirits? And then the other thing, you know, right now, sex, it seems to be a hot topic. People are talking about it all the time. And we're going to be asking the question to the scholars coming in today, will there be sex in heaven? Will there be sex in heaven? So that's one of the questions we'll be bringing up on the court. And then another question that we're going to ask the court tonight, and I always thought about this as well, will we be able to see and know our friends and family members in heaven? Well, the scholars are going to let us know. That's on the Christian Court coming up next right here on the Six Screens Tele Network. Thank you all for coming in, and stay with us. Stay on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. We're going to end this broadcast and go right to the court.